The Be Rad podcast is brought to you by Mofo, male optimization formula with organs to boost testosterone. Brad's macadamia masterpiece, mind-blowing nut butter blend now available on Amazon. Bala Enzyme, electrolyte and triple enzyme recovery drink mix. Paleo Valley, nutrient-rich, ancestral-inspired health products. By Optimizers, performance supplements like magnesium, probiotics, and more. And B-Rad Whey Protein Super Fuel, coming soon. Stay tuned for details. And please visit bradkearns.com to check out my personal selection of favorite products for health, fitness, and peak performance with great discounts for listeners. And here we go with the show.
I think it sounds like a good idea on the surface to prove to yourself that you're not addicted or not dependent upon the substance. Oh yeah, you've been awake and burning energy since you woke up or since you went to sleep the previous night after dinner, and so you're at a caloric deficit. And there's a value to heading out into nature without anything blasting in your ears and just listening to the natural sounds. It's a missing part of modern life.
Hey listeners, I discovered an awesome new electrolyte and triple enzyme powdered drink that's going to knock your socks off. It's called Bala Enzyme, and it comes in a convenient little pouch of bright orange powder that you pour into water for the ultimate electrolyte and antioxidant drink. It's simple, convenient, and yes, the orange tint comes from a potent serving of turmeric along with a clean and diverse assortment of enzymes and electrolytes and a perfect taste that's not fake or too sweet. Bala was created by husband and wife doctors to help their patients recover from inflammation, improve hydration, speed up recovery, even relieve joint pain, improve digestion, and boost immunity. I love their incredible devotion to product quality. There's a lot of research behind it, and I just sprinkle this packet into ice water, and it's so easy to stay hydrated because you absolutely enjoy the taste of the drink. Get their convenient little packets. They even designed it with the tear half torn, so it's easy to open into the water. I love what they think of. And it comes in 3 exciting flavors: pineapple, lime, and berry. It's so potent, it might stain your fingers if you get it on your fingers. And yes, that's a good thing for a serving of turmeric that's that potent. It's also sugar-free, zero carb, and promoting of the 3 R's: rehydrate, relieve, and revive. Please visit balaenzyme.com, BALAENZYME. And of course, there's a special deal for B-Rad podcast listeners, 30% off your first order. Just use the code BRAD30 at balaenzyme.com. Greetings, listeners. It's time to connect the community with a Q&A and feedback show. Thank you so much for writing in to podcast@bradventures.com. Love to hear from you. And we're going to start with a positive review, couple positive reviews left on Apple Podcasts. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for taking the time, people. And if you're inclined to do so yourself, go ahead, leave a review at Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts, and then email us with a copy of the review, screenshot, whatever, and we will enter you into a contest to win a free jar of Brad's Macadamia Masterpiece shipped to your door. It really, really helps the show. And Amanda wrote in to Apple, posted the review, and said, I listen to and follow several health and fitness podcasts. This one is far and away my favorite. Brad offers solid, actionable information in an entertaining way. Thank you, Amanda Jonas. Here's another one. I'm beyond grateful to this podcast. Brad manages to explain complicated topics into a more humanized and relatable conversation. His choices in guests have been inspirational and educational. Listening to them, he's given me insights and support I need to fine-tune myself. For example, I suffer from pre-diabetes. I listened to the Dr. Kate Shanahan episode, and that was a lifesaver. Since then, I've been able to use this accumulated knowledge to lower my body weight and my blood sugar levels. I feel healthier and more in control of my choices because I understand them better. This podcast was the kick I needed to make changes, and it provided the knowledge and support I needed to get started. I always look forward to what other interesting topics I will learn on Brad's show. He's a character. That's what makes it fun. Thank you, Suzuki, for that review. Here's another from Sage, Julia. Brad is insanely funny. Oh my gosh, is that a compliment? I guess so. I'll take it. And somehow manages to make me laugh out loud every time, while also offering consistently great content. I don't know how he does it, but it's a delight to listen to a podcast hosted by someone who is so knowledgeable about all things wellness, who happens to be, and then it continues when you go look at it on Apple. Here comes from Mark. Brad K. is one of the world's leading authorities on healthy living. I strongly recommend this show to anyone interested in healthy living and peak performance in all aspects of diet. Brad pulls it all together: diet, lifestyle, fitness, exercise, mindset, and other factors. Good day, Mark, from all the way down in Australia. And Tom Hodge writes in, the endurance legend himself, says, your Instagram feed and podcasts are some of the most useful information out there. It's awesome to see such great content that everyone should hear and read to improve their lifestyle. Keep up the great work. Barbara says, I love this podcast. Such a great variety of topics covered in all things health. Brad's interviews are informative and engaging. So much value in these episodes. Rock and Chalk Run says, this is one of my favorite health podcasts. Brad is down to earth and brings a balanced approach to health and longevity. I wonder if I'm still down to earth if I keep reading. Oh my gosh, there's quite a few. So thanks for the recent reviews, people. I think everyone gets the point, huh? Let's get into some talk about improving our healthy lifestyles, fitness practices, and a variety of questions from our listeners. And starting off with Jay, he says, I'm a longtime listener, huge fan. I recently learned a hard lesson about the intersection of low-carb diets and hard workouts. I accidentally let my blood sugar get super low, and I bonked. Okay, here's what I'm eating and the working out I'm doing every day. See what you think. Breakfast, black coffee with a tablespoon of grass-fed butter. Lunch, 4 fried pastured eggs, a slice of toast with grass-fed butter, baby carrots and blueberries for dessert. Wow, what a clean living human, huh? After lunch, I sit in direct sunlight for an hour to an hour and a half trying to get some vitamin D, drank water with electrolytes. Perfect score so far, huh, people? 1.5 hours after lunch, he did a muscle mass workout, pull-ups, push-ups, and squats, then some cardio on the Peloton, a pretty difficult 50-minute workout, drinking only water and electrolytes, not eating anything after the workout. About 20 minutes after my Peloton workout, so now we're in the mid-afternoon sometime to late afternoon, I bonked hard. My vision went blurry and my cognition was affected. I was able to get some food and rebound eventually, but I had a headache that lasted about a day. Quite scary. Maybe I'm not consuming enough carbs for my activity level. Maybe the exercise coinciding with my rebound hypoglycemia from lunch caused my blood sugar to drop super low. Maybe getting hot in the sun caused a spike in glucose and then a drop, compared with my exercise, or causing my blood sugar to drop super low. Is it a combination of the three? I love the benefits of steady blood sugar with 2 meals a day and reducing my carb intake, but I don't want to bonk again. I appreciate this information that you can share. Hey, that is a great setup, because I think there are quite a few people in Jay's category here where they're extremely diligent with their dietary practices and burning a lot of calories and leading an active day. And yeah, bonking, if you've ever experienced it, listeners, raise your hand and nod your head. But if you haven't, oh my gosh, it is so, you can't describe with enough emphasis how gnarly it is to be plugging away and feeling fine 1 minute, and then you experience a sudden drop in your blood glucose to the extent that, just as he describes, you start feeling goofy. Yes, it can affect your vision. It definitely affects your cognition. You feel like you're just out of it, and you don't want to continue with your exercise at all. You want to sit on the curb or stop pedaling, and it can be a major ordeal. And we've always discussed this as a depletion of muscle glycogen such that your muscles can no longer perform work. They don't have any energy. And that's the widely understood definition of bonking. But the recent very interesting and compelling research promoted by Dr. Timothy Noakes in South Africa and his central governor theory contends that bonking is not actually a total depletion of energy from the muscle. That in fact, and they've proven this from muscle biopsies on so-called bonked athletes, that there's still some energy available in the muscle to continue on. And so bonking is more of a central nervous system reaction to extreme exercise with insufficient fuel, to command your body, to command your muscles to slow down or even stop, as a way of protecting yourself from actually really and truly running out of energy. Isn't that fascinating? I mean, it doesn't help the person on the side of the curb if they push play right now when they don't feel like going on, and when they get a bite of sugar, they instantly come back to life really quickly, because that happens too with bonking. As soon as you consume something, you get a second wind, and you actually can continue. People can continue long workouts and everything. But it's really interesting to consider that the brain is the ultimate arbiter of fatigue in the body, as per the central governor theory, and that bonking is, according to Dr. Noakes, quote, illusory, right? It's an illusion. And so imagine sitting on the side of the road and getting a muscle biopsy, and some scientist in a white coat saying, see, you still have some molecules of glycogen stored in your muscles. You can theoretically continue on with your marathon run. And the person's like, no, I can't. But imagine this, at your very, very most tired that you've been. Imagine the last time you bonked, or something that you did that was super extreme and you were just completely shattered at the end. And someone came up and put a gun to your head and said, oh, guess what? There's still 4 more miles of the trail to hike, or the rim of the Grand Canyon is still another 1,000 feet above you. Guess what? You're going to continue. You're going to find a way, and you're going to summon the energy. One way is through ketone production. When we know about the science of ketone production, it happens as a response to starvation, when liver glycogen levels are very low and blood glucose levels are very low. And yes, that can happen when you're exercising like crazy, when you're fasting for long periods, when you're diligently restricting carbohydrate intake to 50 grams a day or below. There's all kinds of ways to get into the ketone producing state, and that is an alternative energy source, mainly for your brain, that burns like glucose, that keeps you focused and alert and energetic, even in the absence of dietary carbohydrate. And so back to the story, if we review his caloric intake for the day before his mid or late afternoon 2 workouts, really, the muscle mass workout followed by the Peloton workout going hard for 50 minutes, yeah, definitely pretty easy to drain your glycogen reserves and then experience that emergency situation of the bonk. Because morning was black coffee with grass-fed butter, lunch was 4 eggs, 1 slice of toast, baby carrots and blueberries for dessert. So all told, for the entire day, he had, 25, 30, 40 grams of carbohydrates. And then you're in a weight workout plus Peloton workout, assuming that's going for maybe 90 minutes, you're going to burn way more carbohydrate than you consumed. Look, 25 grams of ingested carbs is only 100 calories. Your body can make around 150 grams of glucose per day through internal mechanisms like gluconeogenesis. That's the conversion of amino acids into glucose, such as lean muscle mass when you're in a starvation diet or what have you. It can also be made, small amounts of glucose can be made from fat metabolism, splitting off the glycerol molecule from the triglyceride, so named, thank you very much. And that also doesn't equal out to much. If you're making 150, you're consuming 100, that's only 250 grams, that's 1,000 calories, and oh yeah, you've been awake and burning energy since you woke up or since you went to sleep the previous night after dinner, and so you're at a caloric deficit. I don't think it's from the hypoglycemia after lunch, because as soon as you start exercising, your body's going to kick into that energy burning mode where you're going to be accessing energy from storage and dumping it into the bloodstream to perform the exercise. That is hormone-sensitive lipase is opening up those cells, insulin is down as soon as you start exercising, and glucagon, insulin's counter-regulatory hormone, rises, and its job, along with HSL, hormone-sensitive lipase, is to get energy into the bloodstream so you can pedal the bicycle or do your push-ups, pull-ups, and so forth. So even if you go and have a hot fudge sundae and then lay on the couch for an hour and you're in this exhausted hypoglycemic state, you got a lot of insulin in your bloodstream, so it's making you feel lethargic, you will get out of that state very quickly as soon as you start pedaling or start burning energy. So it's not any of that stuff. I think it's a basic, straightforward, did not consume enough fuel and then burned a lot of fuel. Very relevant to those of us who are highly devoted to clean eating, as well as a sincere and challenging exercise program. So if you're at your ideal body composition, oh my gosh, you don't want to mess with any of this stuff. Refer back to my show with Rob Wolf, where he said that epic quote, if you want to live longer, lift more weights and eat more protein. And so this idea that we need to fast, we need to restrict carbohydrates, we need to restrict protein is often touted as helping get you into ketogenesis. That is going to be overly stressful for the typical athletic type person who is also getting that hormetic response from exercise, burning energy, starving the cells of energy during exercise, just like you do when you're fasting. So if you combine fasting and strenuous exercise, it can easily become too stressful, and you can have these counter-regulatory mechanisms kick in to where you're not getting the intended benefit of having more energy and feeling great and alert and losing excess body fat. Your body's just going to get tired and slow down if you overdo it. And so in this case, we're talking about a headache for hours afterwards that Jay suffered from, and all these symptoms that he pretty much overdid it. So if you have ideal body composition, you're going to want to fuel, liberally before, during, and or after workouts, as desired and as what works per your trial and error over time. Now, here's another question. When we talk about this, Jay giving his daily diet and exercise log and trying to figure things out, the many of us who are trying to exercise and eat in order to be healthy and drop excess body fat, if that goal is sitting there in the picture, what we want to do there is create a natural caloric deficit over time, a moderate caloric deficit, so you don't kick into those starvation mechanisms where you slow down thyroid, adrenal, endocrine function and compensate for this crash diet approach, which we know is completely disastrous. So in those cases, what we're going to want to do is be adequately fueled for all the workouts, not have these bonking episodes, and sort of naturally back into this end objective of dropping excess body fat. So we want to just go with the flow, make good dietary choices, emphasize clean, wholesome, natural foods, eliminate the big three toxic modern foods of refined grains, sugars, and industrial seed oils. And by default, or without trying, you're going to get there gradually, sometimes in a stair-step manner. So it's not going to be like a half a pound a week for 8 weeks equals 4 pounds. That's not how the human body works. Despite our desire to calculate things out that way and use the handy internet calculator to see what your basal metabolic rate is and then go put your diet into those diet apps, I'm really intrigued to see emerging research suggesting that not only are we quite inaccurate with our estimates of our daily calorie burning, we also are pretty inaccurate with how many calories is represented by a food. Remember, a calorie is not something you just put on a scale and weigh the slice of salmon and have an equation confirming that this many ounces of salmon equals 427 calories. What a calorie is actually, it's actually a kilocalorie. So we use we shorten it to say calorie, but it really means kilocalorie. And a kilocalorie is the amount of energy needed to raise the temperature of a kilogram of water by 1 degree Celsius. So it's a representation of energy. And boy, there are so many variables involved. The main variable involved here is these daily fluctuations in our caloric expenditure due to all manner of variables. One of them is our exercise routine. Listen to my shows with Dr. Herman Ponzer, where he talks about these various compensation effects and the constrained model of energy expenditure, which states that we have a ceiling, an upper limit on the number of calories we burn per day on average as a function of the amount of lean body mass that we carry around. And so that's kind of the general way to determine how many calories you burn. There's some variation by genetics and there's some variation by your activity level. But generally speaking, we burn calories per the amount of lean body mass we have. And this can fluctuate according to burning a lot of excess energy through working out. We're going to burn fewer calories at rest, all these kind of things that we fail to account for when we do the calculation. And it says, my basal metabolic rate is 1,827 calories a day per my age and my weight. And then my spinning class burns 650 calories. Therefore, I burn 2,400. And if I eat 2,200, I'm going to lose weight. It just simply is not that simple. It doesn't work that way. So we have to toss out a lot of the flawed and dated and oversimplified approach to dropping excess body fat and then do the right thing with our exercise, with our sleep, with our diet, and our body will naturally trend toward a more desirable body composition. Now, if you're looking in the mirror and you're a male and you're at 17.2% body fat per the test that you got at the gym, a lot of those are highly inaccurate as well, but something like a DEXA scan, which is known to be extremely accurate for your body fat percentage, you're at 17 and you want to get down to 12, then we have to do some further tweaking, including a more rigorous training program that's going to improve the development and maintenance of lean muscle mass, and then a little more mindfulness with the food choices where we eat to satiety and are very, very careful not to allow these extra calories to leak into the picture that are so common because we have this decadent, indulgent, highly convenient modern life. And so the food's there. We're surrounded by it at all times. During quarantine, when people are home working, 12 feet or 22 feet from their refrigerator, that was a whole nother deal where they had to adjust. And so those are the kind of things out there that can lead to the most success, is just enjoying these nutrient-dense, delicious, satisfying meals to your level of satiety. You could say to your heart's content, but a lot of people have the habit of overeating. And so you eat to satiety, and then you walk away, you keep busy, you keep moving, you optimize fat burning with so many strategies that we talk about on the podcast and in the books, and a lot of them are very familiar to people. But the main one is to ditch those hyper-palatable, nutrient-deficient modern foods that compel us to overeat. My show with Dr. Robert Lustig and his new book, Metabolical, got into that, and he made some profound assertions that I believe he said it's almost impossible to gain excess body fat if you're eating a clean, wholesome diet of natural foods and eliminating the processed foods, because you'll be full and satisfied. And especially with protein, we can all reference, that's why protein is often lauded as a centerpiece of a fat reduction diet, because if you go and eat 2 omelets in the morning or 2 steaks or a giant piece of salmon, the satiety factor is so high that you're not going to be inclined to continue to scrounge in the kitchen to make 2 more eggs or fry up another steak. Not so when it comes to ice cream, popcorn, cheesecake, and the indulgences that when we allow them to leak into the picture, they continue to leak and leak. So I'm trying to get back to Jay's report and what happened to him when he bonked. But I wanted to paint that picture of the 2 disparate paths for people who either have optimal body composition and then those who want to drop excess body fat. And so final note on the people with optimal body composition, the Tommy Wood strategy is wonderful. Recall on our show, he talked about this where he counsels his athletic clients to eat as much healthy food as possible until they gain a pound of fat, and then turn the dial back and cut back a little bit and go from 2 omelets to 1.5 or whatever. But that was an interesting take on our kind of obsession with the fewer calories they eat, the healthier we'll be and the longer we'll live. If you can get more nutritional value into your body, and of course you're active and exercising and burning it off and not packing on fat because you eat all these healthy foods all day long, that's not what he's talking about. But that's one way to gauge whether you're getting enough calories. This conversation is particularly relevant to the females in the low body fat category who have obviously optimized their diet and lifestyle practices to not be part of the crowd that is incessantly gaining excess body fat and turning in adverse blood values. No, they're working out hard and they're trying for performance goals. But what happens is it's tremendously stressful, especially to the female organism who is genetically wired to prepare for reproduction, including the preservation of sufficient levels of body fat. And that's all genetic hardwiring. So the female is more predisposed to carrying fat than the male, obviously, right? And when you start to chip away at those outer edges of body composition, some weird things can happen. And so like imagine the buff, lean CrossFit female experiencing problems with thyroid hormones, adrenal hormones, and that's a common thing because it's just too stressful. And the answer, the way out of that would be to consume additional nutrient-dense calories to allow all the organs and systems of the body to function optimally. And guess what? You probably won't even gain that much body fat. You'll just be healthier and more energetic and perhaps improve your workout performance. And if we're drawing a circle, yes, we're ending back at that starting point where if you're putting in superior workout performances, you're going to be at your optimal level of body composition anyway, even if you eat more food. Okay, so let's take a lot of that science and this long rambling answer. And one important takeaway is to eat as much nutritious food as you desire, with the governor pedal being, hey, look at that, I gained a pound of body fat and I didn't want to, and then we just dial things back. And if you listen to my Fatty Popcorn Boy Saga podcast, where I allowed myself to gain way more than 1 pound. It was more like 10 pounds of excess body fat. Even though I was active, even though my diet was optimal, everything was great, my body fat was still in the lower ranges and healthy, but it's not what I wanted for my athletic peak performance goals. And so I had to recalibrate. And guess what was sitting there shining me in the face was the habit of these indulgences that were leaking into my diet more and more so. So these would be the nutrient deficient foods that were consumed, of course, in addition to a wonderful healthy foundation of nutritious foods, right? So if I had my omelet, I had my steak, I had my delicious meals, and then also enjoyed some avocado ice cream smeared in macadamia nut butter, or a bowl of popcorn with butter and extra virgin olive oil on there. It's not going to kill me, but it is going to add excess body fat, especially when you're allowing these hyperpalatable foods to leak in there. Okay, how does that sound? Everybody on board here with this idea? And we don't want to bonk. That's going to have repercussions that could last a few days, in my opinion, in my memory, when I bonked. What happens, boy, the brain and the genetics of human survival do not like to be starved. We do not like to run out of gas. That's why bonking is so powerful, even though there is more energy left in the muscle. But when that happens, oh boy, your brain, these switches light up in your brain, and you are going to go and overconsume calories for the next day or 2 days or 3 days. And in the tragic example of The Biggest Loser television show, there's now research tracking the participants 6 years later, and almost all of them have gained back all the weight they lost and then some. There's metabolic problems galore because they went into such an extreme, grueling, exhausting exercise pattern combined with starvation. And what happens is the body recoils and rebounds for 6 years of overeating and under-exercising to compensate for that 6 weeks of pure torture. So be reasonable here and follow that under the radar strategy to getting the final 5, 10, 15, or 20 pounds of excess body fat off your body. Be patient and allow it to happen naturally rather than obsess about it. Yeah. Okay, here's an interesting letter that was shared with me by Brock Armstrong, my guest and the host of the Second Wind podcast. So someone listened to our interview together on the B-Rad podcast, and he became a follower of the show. It's so awesome. So he was actually writing to Brock, but he wanted to share some comments, especially some things that came out during our show. He's 58, semi-retired, and claims it's hard to find good information for the older demographic. He says, thanks, Brock, for doing so, and also crediting this show with appealing to that. I mean, how can I not? I'm 57 myself, right? What am I going to talk to the younger crowd and ignore the older demographic? So important to keep that older demographic fit and healthy and aging gracefully. Our future as a society depends on it. Oh, my goodness. So anyway, Theo here likes to take a 30-day challenge every January. For the last several years. He's done a dry January. He's done a dry and no dessert January, adding a daily workout for January. And in 2022, he's added on a few layers. One of them was inspired by Brock's interview with me. Oh, it was on his podcast. Okay, so he listened to me on the Second Wind podcast and then started following the B-Rad podcast. That's cool, man. Okay, anyway, we were talking about the influence on our minds that electronic devices can have, especially in the morning. I think I was talking to Brock about my wonderful morning exercise routine where I hit the deck and immediately commence a proactive, health-promoting behavior pattern instead of reaching for my mobile device and getting sucked in. And Theo says, you know what? This reminded me of when my wife and I camp. We usually have poor cell service, no Wi-Fi, and so we start our days by reading an actual, real book. And he notes he always feels more relaxed when he starts his day that way. But since quarantine and the upheaval in the world, he's become more obsessed with checking the news as soon as he wakes up, the numbers, the trends, the illness rates, and now we have Ukraine. There's always something as soon as we wake up to send us into that hyper-stimulatory, high-stress reactive mode. And as I've quoted many times, there's tremendous research showing that this has an extremely destructive effect on the brain and our ability to remain mindful, calm, relaxed, and in that high-level thinking, strategic reasoning mode, which is something that is very important to engage first thing in the morning when you're making your to-do list or writing in your gratitude journal or deciding what to prioritize. And so I prioritize exercise every single day, and I worry about Ukraine or the COVID numbers or the stock market or the emails, the text messages, the social media stream later, hopefully with tremendous restraint and discipline, because I've developed these skills by passing on that reach for the phone first thing in the morning. So now when Theo wakes up, he has Greek yogurt and water before his coffee, reads for 30 to 60 minutes before engaging in any device. It's been life-changing. Thank you so much, Brock and Brad. Hi, listeners. You may not believe this, but Brad is going to talk about beauty regimens and healthy, toxin-free cosmetics. Yes, this is an incredible new area of personal interest, as about a year ago I noticed, hey, I look and feel pretty healthy and fit all over, except for my skin, and I'd never paid much attention to putting anything on there, but now, oh my gosh, I am a regular with this wonderful vitamin C enriched all-natural skin serum and numerous other excellent products from a unique company called Beauty Counter. What's important to understand here is that most skincare products contain all manner of toxic ingredients, endocrine disruptors, obesogens, and carcinogens that can harm your health and compromise other devoted diet, exercise, and lifestyle practices. We do not want to get overwhelmed or freaked out here. I know there's so many to-do list items to eat healthy and exercise and sleep, but here, cutting back on your exposure to environmental toxins in every way is a priority. And there's few things more important than what you put on your skin, because guess where it's going? Right into your bloodstream. Here's an interesting tidbit for you European listeners and for you American listeners. Europe, the European Union, has banned thousands of different compounds that are found in conventional skincare and makeup products. You know how many the USA has banned? 11, just like in Spinal Tap. That is not a good scene, people. The responsibility is on us to choose wisely, and that's why I'm so excited about being involved with Beautycanner, because they do all the research to be sure that you're getting toxin-free, chemical-free products. Oh my gosh, what this means, if you're buying conventional skincare products, there is most likely lead in your lipstick, endocrine disruptors in your perfume or cologne, that's stuff that trash our sex hormones, testosterone, estrogen, and all kinds of toxins in things like your antiperspirant. Thankfully, if you go look at beautycounter.com/Brad Kearns, you will discover a clean line of products where every single ingredient in every product is extensively tested for safety. I think you're going to love checking out their product line at beautycounter.com/Brad Kearns and making these simple switches away from toxic-laden mainstream products. Listen to my podcast with Melanie Avalon to go into great detail here about all these concerns. You heard that word obesogens I talked about? That's right. Cosmetic products that will actually promote fat storage. Bad deal. So please take a visit there, beautycounter.com/Brad Kearns. If nothing else, try the All Bright C Serum in the distinctive yellow bottle. My wrinkles are vanishing as we speak. Now, he also, during his challenge, added some yoga class. I've always been curious about yoga, but I've been kind of self-conscious as an older, larger, but still pretty fit guy. I've never touched my toes in my life, and now I do a 15-minute routine a few times a week, and then lifting weights in the basement or doing a bike ride. So that's some positive changes that he reports to the start of his day. But here's an interesting one. He says, you know what else? I'm not doing any more 30-day workout challenges. I hit January 31st a broken man, having alternated between strength training and cycling for 30 days. When Brock talks about, he has a Change Academy program that you can learn more about when you visit his website, brockarmstrong.com. He emphasizes recovery. He knows how to do this right. He works with a variety of fitness levels from elites to regular everyday people. And we need to emphasize that more, especially when we have these jazzy challenges that you can find everywhere come January 1st. And I look at it from a distance and am disappointed in the intensity and the level of hype that's usually involved when we're trying to get people off their butt and into gear. And that's great to take on a challenge instead of do nothing. However, you don't want to hit January 31st a broken man. So if you're doing any of these lifestyle challenges that you're compelled to do, you want to turn things around, and you're using January 1st as a catalyst, which people have disparate opinions on. I've heard people kind of knock it because you're going outside of your own self-discipline and using an arbitrary calendar date instead of just saying, hey, you know what? Today's March 17th. I'm going to start getting it done right now. I'm not even going to wait till tomorrow. I'm going to go out and do my miniature workout tonight and then go to the gym tomorrow. You know, that kind of mentality instead of being in these structured challenges. So that's an interesting vote on the importance of tackling sensible challenges with your eye on long-term adherence, long-term enjoyment, long-term success, rather than just blasting out a month of impressive, in Theo's case, back-to-back strength training and cycling. Okay. And if you're wondering about my recording prowess, I have this fabulous studio that I've outfitted with professional help, including Brock Armstrong, who I just mentioned. But that was some epic hyperventilation by my 15-year-old dog. And nothing's wrong with her, but she's excited for some reason. And she was just going. And I think she probably got on the mic. So still going strong at 15. Very impressive. And you know what? She gets out every single morning for a nice outing on the trails, free, and then a nice walk around the block every single night. And I can't recommend highly enough treating your dog with the kindness and respect that you owe to the animal when you made that commitment to own it for its lifetime. And guess what else? Guess who else gets out the door twice a day for some nice fresh air and enjoyment is the owner. So good stuff. Just in case you heard the breathing, there's my little add-on. Tom Phelps, what an interesting next question in the lineup, because listen to this. Hey, Brad, I've listened to several of your podcasts. I've become a big fan. Question about alcohol. I just completed a 30-day challenge that included no alcohol. Okay, so put those two together. Gee, I wonder if that could elicit a rebound effect if someone was swearing off something like alcohol and they had a moderate and habit that was well in control. I don't know. I think it sounds like a good idea on the surface to prove to yourself that you're not addicted or not dependent upon the substance. And as I've said before, that's one of my goals, is to not be addicted to anything, including my strenuous, challenging workouts that I have a tendency to overdo if I'm not being really careful to notice that, hey, of course I want to go and practice jumping over the high jump bar, but my legs aren't quite right today, so I'm going to pull the plug and skip it, even though my competitive intensity, my mentality wants to go out there and check that box and get that instant gratification of pushing the body hard. So I have to exercise patience every day to make sure that I'm not drifting over into that category where whatever it is, your passion becomes a negative addiction. And is there such thing as a positive addiction? Oh my gosh, that's a good question. I'm going to ask my future podcast guest, Dr. Anna Lemke, that expert on addiction, author of the best-selling book, Dopamine Nation. That's going to be a great show coming up in the months ahead. And back to Tom's question. I enjoy beer and whiskey. I would like your opinion on whether alcohol is never good. Good in certain amounts. And if so, which types are best for health or do the least amount of harm? Well, this is a issue that Mark Sisson and I have talked over for years. And in the publication of the original Primal Blueprint, we had a section about sensible indulgences. And in that section, we talked about wine, dark chocolate, and high-fat desserts or something. Okay, so we had this commentary that red wine was a sensible choice from the alcohol category because it had those antioxidant properties, the widely touted resveratrol, and here's a study that shows people who drink one glass of wine live longer than people who don't drink at all, and all that kind of stuff. Then we reflected over time that we didn't need to stand in a position to recommend alcohol consumption to anyone. So we kind of went for the throat and took off the pleasantries and said, look, you're not going to read us in a book recommending that you go and consume alcohol. Alcohol has zero nutritional properties, right? There is no nutritional benefit from consuming alcohol. Now, from consuming red wine, okay, it has some antioxidant profile in there. That's from the grapes, people. So if you want to get the antioxidant benefits of wine, you can also buy a handful of grapes and skip to the chase without the alcohol. The other thing about alcohol calories is that they are the, quote, first to burn upon ingestion. And you put the burning of all other calorie sources on hold immediately as soon as you consume the alcohol, because you have to burn through the alcohol quickly because it's toxic in the bloodstream. That's why we get the buzz, because our brain is starved of its usual source of energy and is dealing with a poison, is metabolizing a poison. Hey, it doesn't sound as fun right now, huh? Anyway, there's also that argument that we can all personally reason with, that it's going to be an enjoyable part of life. You're going to do it in a sensible manner. It adds to social experience. It reduces inhibitions, whatever you want to say. But there's no reason for a health expert to tout consumption of any kind of alcohol as something that is part of a health regimen. It's only the least offensive approach is what we should be talking about. And speaking of that, Brian Johnson, Liver King, who's now a world-famous household name, I've talked about him for years, the founder of Ancestral Supplements and my partner in the Mofo product. Now he's on Instagram. He's showing everybody he's the real deal and how he lives his amazing ancestrally aligned life. And he has a great piece on his website. I think you can find it under the About Us link. One of the greatest single pieces of information ever written on the internet. A very, very lengthy discourse on how he lives his ancestrally aligned life. And there's a whole section about alcohol and how to do it in the most badass manner to stay aligned with ancestral living goals. And so it's not for everyone, but he talks about taking 6 liver capsules, being in a fasted state, drinking Everclear, right? The purest and most potent alcohol you can find on the market. So you're taking a shot of intense alcohol so that a little goes a long way, right? You don't need 6 crappy, watered down light beers to get your buzz. You're going to take a single shot of this. You're going to chase it with some more liver pills, and you're going to have a squeeze of lemon in there too. And you're going to follow this protocol, and you're going to wake up the next day and you're not going to be the least bit hungover because you followed the protocol. And it's pretty interesting because in learning about this, mainly through my epic podcast with Todd White, the founder of Dry Farm Wines. That was way back in 2018, but you can search and find it within seconds when you go to the bradkearns.com podcast landing page. Just type in Todd White, Dry Farm Wines. And he explains that the predominant reasons that we get sick or experience hangovers from alcohol consumption is all the other crap that is in the alcohol, not the alcohol itself. The human does a pretty good job metabolizing that alcohol quickly, unless you absolutely poison yourself with extreme excessive drinking in a short time, right? Then you're going to be in big trouble and possibly a medical patient. But in general, the alcohol is not the problem. It's all the chemicals, the additives, the other poisons that are contained in mainstream wine products and the other types of alcohol that are commercially processed. And so this concept that Dry Farm Wine promotes, where they're getting only the cleanest, purest alcohol, the cleanest, purest wine with no additives, no chemicals, certified to be chemical-free in their laboratory, and completely fermented for the minimal sugar level, rather than having the fermentation chemically arrested by chemical intervention to make a sweeter wine, which is very common in the mainstream wine categories because the consumer has a sweet tooth. And so when you drink Dry Farm wine, you're going to get a premium wine grown in Europe with the traditional methods, no irrigation. That's what Dry Farm means. And you're not going to get any of the chemicals or the toxic byproducts or the extra sugar that you can't taste because it's disguised in the composition of alcohol. And so you're going to get a sugar bomb and an alcohol bomb together. A lot of times the mixed drinks do the same thing. So you're getting this huge load of sugar that you can't burn immediately because you have to burn the alcohol. And that sugar is going to be either stored as fat. And when you bring the sugar out of your bloodstream, you get the alcohol out of your bloodstream and you have a severe crash in energy because there's nothing less because the body is dealing with this detoxification event. And that's when maybe you're going to go binge on quick energy foods and wake up the next morning from an energy roller coaster, sugar high, sugar crash, the alcohol and the chemicals and the other foods and the peripherals involved, maybe staying up too late, not getting enough sleep, all that kind of thing. So the least offensive way to drink alcohol is probably Liver King's protocol, like his 11-step process with all these other strategies in place. And the reason he mentions liver pills, not just because he's the Liver King and sells liver pills, but the liver is charged with some extra work to do when processing the alcohol. And so taking some desiccated liver can definitely help with that. There's also a chart that you can find on the internet called we'll put it in the show notes, the Paleo Alcohol Guide or something like that. You can find it. And that gives you the ranking of the least offensive sources of alcohol. For example, tequila is made from a cactus plant. It's not made from gluten, from grains like beer, which the beer will contain gluten unless it's a special gluten-free beer. And so from the paleo perspective, you're going to have less exposure to anti-nutrients when you're consuming tequila. And of course, you can comment on the various options for alcohol, but mixed drinks would be way down the list as an inferior choice to drinking minimal alcohol on a fasted, empty stomach so you can get the desired effect and not have to consume mass quantities over periods of hours. Very interesting stuff. Personally, I don't consume alcohol because I'm already silly and crazy enough without it to be the life of any party if desired. That started way back in college when I noticed that I was just as silly as everyone else. I didn't realize everybody was drunk. It took me a while to catch on, and I thought, well, okay, I'm right in the mix every time, so I guess I don't need any of that. And also, I don't enjoy the taste, and I'm not in the habit. And so from that outside perspective, I remember being challenged by that recently. Someone said, "Why don't you drink ever, Brad? Are you superior to us or something?" No, it was a friendly comment. And when I was put on the spot, I was like, I don't know. I'm not against it. I don't think that my health is going to be harmed by enjoying a glass of premium dry farm wines or whatever I'm going to choose, or going and doing the Liver King protocol with a shot of Everclear to celebrate another successful year under the sun or what have you. But it doesn't go into the mix. So maybe, I don't know. What do you think, reader? Should I try? Should I try to get a buzz on a couple times a year and then report back? I don't know. But I will end with this public service announcement to please drink responsibly. It's an area of society that has had so much destruction and tragedy and disease and excess that we can all be better served to think twice, especially when we're talking about being out there on the roads and the tragedy that occurs every single day and has touched my life so personally, because when I was in high school, we lost a total of 9 students in my 3 years of high school from alcohol-related automobile accidents. So it's no joke. And hey, maybe that's why I'm not a huge drinker today. Anyway, thank you for that opening, Tom, for me to go on a rant. And check out Dry Farm Wines if you're a wine drinker. So here's Brad, the non-drinker, telling you how to consume wine. But I love what they're doing, and I think it's really important that we support companies that are committed to offering the cleanest products. Same with the chocolate. And listen to my show with Sean Askinosie, founder of Askinosie Chocolate, their artisan bean to bar chocolate maker in St. Louis, Missouri, and their tremendous commitment to share in their profits with the farmers and source their beans directly from the farmer, giving that farmer a fair price, and the dramatic difference in that type of business model versus consuming mainstream chocolate, milk chocolate, whatever it is, dark chocolate from the commodity suppliers. And what happens there is when you are paying the familiar low price for a chocolate bar, Sean asserts that you can be certain that you are supporting child slave labor in Africa with your purchase, with your consumer dollar. And if that ain't a slap in the face, I don't know what is. And he goes on to explain that the inexpensive nature of these mainstream consumer products is made possible by buying large quantities of beans, often substandard beans that are harvested indiscriminately, such that they throw in the rotten beans because they're too lazy to do it right and do it by hand. It's a very hand-intensive farming process, but they ferment all these beans, even the rotten ones, and they mask the taste by putting in a lot of sugar and milk, in the case of milk chocolate, to make it taste like something palatable. And so the reason they can charge $3 for a Hershey bar or $2.50 for a 2-ounce bar, like a dollar an ounce is way down at the bottom of the price scale, and therefore that means that the farmer who grew those beans did not make very much money, and therefore they had to rely on what's essentially slave labor, underage labor, very, very poorly regulated labor in the prominent cacao producing countries in Africa. And you can only get the cacao bean in the equatorial regions. So most of it comes from South America, Africa, some of it from peripheral areas like Hawaii and the East. And that's why I love Puna chocolate from the Big Island of Hawaii. They make a gourmet artisan bean-to-bar chocolate where they grow the beans right there in America. The farmer's getting a fair price, and you go and purchase one of their bars, and it's $11 or $12.50 or something. And you're like, wow, that's expensive. But after you hear my show with Sean Askinosie, hopefully you will turn the corner in your mind and never again support the mainstream commodity chocolates. How do you know that you're buying a crappy commodity bar? Is you look on the ingredients, and what you want to see on your dark chocolate bar, the first ingredient must be cacao beans. That implies that this maker of the bar, if it's Askinosie, that's great. If it's Puna, like I mentioned, if it's some of my other favorites like Lily Bell Farms in Oregon, it will say cacao beans as the first ingredient on the label, meaning that they got a gunny sack shipment of beans to their facility and roasted and conched and processed the chocolate themselves. So they know the origin of the beans. It also has that bean to bar designation somewhere on the label. You can also look for the familiar label that says fair trade, and that implies it's not perfect, as Sean described in detail on the show, but it implies that they've engaged in some scrutiny for where they sourced their cacao beans. I have a heavy heart when I go into a place like Whole Foods Market, which is purporting or is conveying to the consumer that they're doing all this hard work to scrutinize what goes on their store shelves so you can be assured that everything in there is healthy. However, the shelves are littered with products that contain refined industrial seed oils. For some reason, they haven't got on board at a corporate level to ditch that, eliminate that from their store. They do say on their website that you'll find nothing in the store that contains hydrogenated vegetable oil. But that's such old news. I mean, it was headline news, 10, 15 years ago, where we realized we were getting absolutely bludgeoned with this major poison in all these processed foods, and then all the companies got wise and took it out, but they still have other forms of oil, soybean, cottonseed, canola, corn oil that you see on the label of the little snacks, and even in the hot foods bar, which is so tragic. So I'm going to go get some chicken drumsticks at Whole Foods, and it's going to be prepared with canola oil still. But the reason I mentioned it was you go to their chocolate section in most of their stores, and it's still better than a mainstream supermarket. So I shop frequently there when I'm traveling, and I shop with great discrimination because I know what I'm looking for, but I have to call them out for not being the oasis that they purport themselves to be. But commonly, their chocolate selection is from one of the major food distributors that carries these 17 types of bars, and a lot of them, if not all of them at times, are from this commodity chocolate processing world. And so I'm looking at even these earthy, poofy looking labels where they seem like they're a woke company. You know, the rainforest gets 10% of the profits for this bar. And you look on the label and you will have these terms. The terminology for the use of commodity chocolate will be things like chocolate liqueur as the first ingredient, dark chocolate as the first ingredient, cocoa mass as the first ingredient, things other than cacao beans. And that implies that they purchase some bulk item like a giant barrel of chocolate that's already been turned into liquid. And of course, this is all generalizations, and I'm not an expert, but I would love for you to dig further into this by listening to my show with Sean and also my show with chocolate expert Torreya Rodriguez, and just educate yourself a little bit. But basically, one way, shortcut, if you don't want to do all the research, is go look at the price of the bar. And you're expecting to pay $3 per ounce or more for gourmet artisan bean-to-bar fair trade dark chocolate, and that's just the way it is. Yeah, so you can go into Whole Foods and ask customer service, do you have any really expensive dark chocolate? Okay, enough about all that. But I think we got off on that tangent talking about alcohol and making sensible choices with your wine consumption, your alcohol consumption. Go look at Liver King's story there on ancestralsupplements.com. Order yourself a bottle of Mofo while you're at it. I can't say enough about this supplement. It's just fantastic, and it blows away any notion of taking a multivitamin or something that's processed in a laboratory, because we're talking about pure animal organs in an unadulterated, freeze-dried state. Excellent nutritional benefit. And I can't believe I just did that little segue, because the next question from Mike is talking about Mofo. He says, Brad, you mentioned adding Mofo capsules and other capsules to your smoothie. Do you add the capsules, or do you empty the contents of each capsule one by one? Oh my gosh, anybody who knows me knows the answer to that. Are you kidding? Stand there and empty the capsules one by one? No way, man. You dump those capsules in there. They're encased in gelatin. It blends up really easily, and you are drinking your scene. Mike wonders which way absorbs it better. Gee, it could be absorbed better if you throw them into the smoothie and pulverize them, although the gelatin is no trouble for the body to digest and then release the wonderful contents of whatever capsule you're swallowing. And he wants to continue with his comments. The last bit of your show, titled Emerging Trends Part 1, really hit home for me. You talked about trying to text or email while listening to someone. I do or did that very often when my wife was talking to me. Let me just finish this text quickly, I think, or I can sure listen while I'm doing this, low priority, low cognitive demand task. But actually, I can't. So now I'll flip that phone over onto its face and I will pay attention. Thank you for that tip. And thank you, Mike, because we can easily drift into this. It bugs the crap out of me when I see it around in daily life, because I have those memories of living and engaging with people before we had devices on our arms or on our bodies. But of course, I do it myself too, and it's just a reflexive thing, especially when you're holding on to the device and building these habits day after day after day of being chained to your device. So a little reminder, can't hurt anybody. The other thing you mentioned was listening to podcasts in the car. I generally do that, or I'll listen to podcasts while I'm taking care of horses or doing work around my home. And sometimes I realize that I'd rather stare out the window and ruminate if I'm driving, or have a make-believe discussion, or where I present my view on a topic of interest, pretending that someone else is listening with interest. Right. Good point. Good point. I feel that. I often take the opportunity when I'm out exercising in nature to listen to podcasts, because I consume so many of them. That's why I listen to everything at 1.75 to 2.0 speed and try to just squeeze in as much information as I possibly can all the time. But you know what? Yeah, sometimes it's better, and there's a value to heading out into nature without anything blasting in your ears and just listening to the natural sounds. It's a missing part of modern life. Okay, back on another topic. Mike is talking about adding in carbs to your diet in association with your workout energy expenditure. I get what you're saying here, Brad. I think I'm pretty active. I like to joke that the only time I sit down is when I go to bed. I do morning flexibility, resistance exercises, not quite as much as you, but I do sprints, I jump, I like to add things to my jogging session to mix it up, like on your Jogging 2.0 video, yet I often wish for something sweeter to eat in my carnivore-ish type diet. Brad, do you do carb cycling? I watched a video by Thomas DeLauer, smart guy there, about carb cycling. Seems like a good idea. So to answer your question, I suppose I do. It's not deliberate. It's not like the bodybuilder style where Tuesday's coming and you're going to add 250 grams of carbs and you're going to sure enough measure them out. None of that. I'm far too lazy, too busy, and don't care enough to do anything in a regimented manner. But I do feel like my carb intake is increased in association with strenuous workouts. And since I've been doing a lot of strenuous workouts, over the past several years, especially as I get more involved and enthused about sprinting and high jumping, I've tremendously increased my carbohydrate intake from my days testing out the ketogenic diet and working on the book, The Keto Reset Diet, back in 2017. And I'm a strong advocate for going with your appetite. And so an athletic type person who is craving carbs, I'm going to put that pre-qualifier in there, because someone who's unhealthy, doesn't exercise, eats too many processed carbs, and is craving carbs is showing signs that they are dependent or addicted to carbs as their primary source of energy. So those of us not in that category, I think you got to go with the flow and eat what your brain is telling you at times, with all other things being in the healthy category. And the only time I make a deliberate effort is I'll get home from my most difficult, challenging workouts, and I'll be sure to prepare my B-Rad Superfuel smoothie as soon as possible, because I think that is a good strategy to get home and get that fuel into your system right away. So it's very high protein, also has sufficient carbs to recover from the workout, and it's just getting the recovery process started and getting those amino acids into the bloodstream to begin protein synthesis and help my legs come back stronger and more quickly from the challenge that they endured during the workout. Okay, so back to some final comments from Mike. I agree with you on limiting things to a certain healthy limit. For example, enough on the cold plunge. You don't have to stay in there forever. And I think I've talked about a little bit on recent shows, but I became such a huge enthusiast of cold plunging starting in around 2016. And guess what? If you adapt and habituate, you can last longer and longer and get more and more accolades from social media and wow your visitors to show that I can stay in the 38-degree water no problem for 5 minutes. But to what end? And the research shows conclusively that the hormonal boost that you get can come in a very short exposure to cold. There's a prominent study out of Finland that's quoted frequently where the subjects were exposed to 40-degree Fahrenheit water for 20 seconds. Just 20 seconds, boom. A few breaths, okay, it's cold, and you're out. And that resulted in a 200 to 300% increase in the prominent mood elevating and focusing hormone norepinephrine that lasted for up to an hour after the cold exposure. So I realized that there was a possible chance of overdoing all the various hormetic stressors that can mix in wonderfully to a health enthusiast life. In my case, they were high intensity sprint workouts, cold exposure in the chest freezer, fasting, and being in the 55 plus age category while doing all these things. And if you throw those all together, sometimes that can be overly stressful. So I've learned to mix and match and tone things down. For example, not combining stressful high-intensity workouts with fasting. You don't have to do that on the same day. Maybe on the day that I'm traveling and sitting on an airplane, I'm going to consume very few calories or engage in an extended fast to try and beat jet lag, but certainly not on the day where I'm out there cranking. And same with the cold plunge. I realized that pairing a devoted cold plunge on the same morning as a sprint workout can often make me feel a little bit blah in the afternoon. So thanks for listening, Mike, and for emphasizing that point. And for everyone listening, that is a wonderful hour of power on some really cool topics. I enjoyed the show. I hope you did listening. Maybe it's brought up some questions, comments, feedback from you. Oh my gosh, we're talking about alcohol. Should Brad get drunk? What a wild show. And let's see what you think. Send some feedback to podcast@bradventures.com. And like I started the show with those wonderful reviews, we appreciate it so much. It's myself and a big team involved putting these things together. We got Gail doing the timestamps and the links. We got Sienna doing some wonderful written work. We got TJ running the control tower and doing everything behind the scenes. We got Vuk doing the audio mastering. We got Jack doing the social media and the video content. And we're all working hard to get the nice message out to you. And it really helps us when you spread the word. So whatever you can do there is great. And why not win a free jar of macadamia nut butter? So go leave a review right now on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts and share the show with your friends. And that's it. Talk to you soon. Hey listeners, I want to tell you about an interesting product from Paleo Valley. Apple cider vinegar capsules. This product allows you to enjoy all the healing properties of apple cider vinegar in your daily diet without the hassle or the burning that comes when you try to swallow it directly. And the healing properties are many. They're well validated. You've probably heard how apple cider vinegar helps with blood glucose control, breaking down amino acids for better absorption, and general digestive health and nutrient assimilation. The Paleo Valley Apple Cider Vinegar Complex adds other healing spices like turmeric, ginger, cinnamon, and lemon for more digestive health. As a whole, this formulation has a lot of research-backed validation that you'll improve blood pressure, cardiovascular health, and disease prevention, and profound benefits for insulin sensitivity, satiety and hunger management, glucose regulation, and fat metabolism. The apple cider vinegar complex is a great idea to take when you're traveling and eating different foods, giving your digestive system the boost it needs. Everything in the bottle is organic, and the formula has been carefully fermented into potent acetic acid, which confers the aforementioned health benefits. Why don't you try some? Go to paleovalley.com and take that 15% discount with the code BRAD15. Thank you for listening to the show. I love sharing the experience with you and greatly appreciate your support. Please email podcast@bradventures.com with feedback, suggestions, and questions for the Q&A shows. Subscribe to our email list at bradkearns.com for a weekly blast about the published episodes and a wonderful bi-monthly newsletter edition with informative articles and practical tips for all aspects of healthy living. You can also download several awesome free ebooks when you subscribe to the email list. And if you could go to the trouble to leave a 5 or 5-star review with Apple Podcasts or wherever else you listen to the shows, that would be super incredibly awesome. It helps raise the profile of the B-Rad podcast and attract new listeners. And did you know that you can share a show with a friend or loved one by just hitting a few buttons in your player and firing off a text message? My awesome podcast player called Overcast allows you to actually record a soundbite excerpt from the episode you're listening to and fire it off with a quick text message. Thank you so much for spreading the word. And remember, be rad.